Something is happening at Casio right now, and most people are looking at the wrong thing. We are going to show you exactly what that thing is. And once you see it, you will understand why the 2026 release calendar is not just a product announcement. It is a question the brand is asking about its own identity. A question it may not be able to take back after asking it. Stay with us because this starts in 1989 and it ends somewhere that nobody in the watch industry fully anticipated. The brand that belonged to everyone. There is a very short list of things that students, soldiers, billionaires, and heads of state have worn at the same time, for the same reason, without irony. The Casio F91W is on that list. Barack Obama wore one before he was president. Jeff Bezos wore one after he built Amazon. The U.S. Marine Corps added it to its official uniform accessories list in 2004. It is still on that list today. Not as a historical footnote, as active equipment. The watch costs about $23. It weighs 21 grams. The case is plastic. The strap is plastic. The display is a black LCD screen with green backlight. There is no sapphire crystal. There is no automatic movement. There is no Swiss certification. There is no brand heritage built on racing, or diving, or aerospace. There is an alarm, a stopwatch, a 7-year battery, and a design that has not changed since 1989. Let that land for a moment. The iPhone in 1989 did not exist. The internet was a government research project. The Berlin Wall was still standing. Casio released the F91W and then simply did not change it. For 37 years, no redesign, no refresh, no anniversary edition with a different bezel. The same case, the same module, the same buttons, the same price, roughly. 3 million units ship every year. In 2026, that figure sits at 2.3 million annually, and that number is not declining. It is growing. The F91W shipped 7.1% more units in 2026 than in 2025. In the year that the global smartwatch market crossed $42 billion. In the year that Apple sold nearly 50 million Apple Watches. The F91W grew. That is not nostalgia. Nostalgia drives a spike and then fades. This is something else. This is a product so well matched to what people actually need that no amount of technological progress has been able to make it irrelevant. The U.S. Marine Corps is not keeping the F91W on its uniform list for sentimental reasons. They are keeping it because it is the most reliable, most affordable, most practical timekeeper available. Soldiers in extreme conditions do not need a smartwatch. They need something that works. The F91W works, always. This is what the watch world calls God tier. A product that exists beyond the conversation about money or taste or prestige. The F91W is not respected because it is cheap. It is respected because nothing has ever replaced it at what it does. That is Casio's foundation. Everything else the brand builds sits on top of it. And in 2026, you need to understand that foundation, to understand what is actually at stake. Now, let's look at what Casio is actually releasing, not the noise. The 2026 signals. Casio released over 30 new G-Shock models in 2026. When a brand releases that many products in 1 year, most people focus on the most exciting ones. The collaborations, the premium pieces, the bold colors. They zoom in on individual releases and try to decide whether each one is good or bad. That is the wrong way to read a release calendar like this. The right way is to zoom out. Not, is this watch good? But what does this batch of watches tell us about where the brand is going? When you zoom out on Casio's 2026 releases, 3 things stand out, and they are not about any single watch. The first signal is sustainability. The F91W now has a bio-based resin version. Bio-based resin is made with plant-derived materials instead of fully petroleum-based plastic. It is a small change. A material change to the strap and case. The design did not change. The functions did not change. The price did not meaningfully change. But here is what matters. Casio changed nothing about the F91W for 37 years. They changed it now, not because the watch needed improvement, because the market around it has changed. Buyers care about sustainability in 2026 inches, a way that did not register in 1989. Casio is updating the F91W, not for the watch's sake, but for the audience's sake. That is a brand reading the room. And brands that read the room are brands that are paying attention to their image, which means they are brands that want something from their image, something more than they already have. The second signal is premiumization. The MRGB2100D 2A, launched in January 2026. It is inspired by the Haguro-san Gojunoto, a 5-story pagoda in Japan's Tohoku region, a designated national treasure. The inspiration is not just aesthetic. The case is T64 titanium alloy. The top bezel is Kobarion, the same hand-polishing technique found on high-end Japanese dress watches from Grand Seiko and beyond. Solar-powered, radio-controlled, Bluetooth. And the price is around $4,200 in the US. The third signal is price pressure. Casio's collector community tracks pricing closely. The discussion in 2026 is not whether prices will rise, it is by how much. The answer has been consistently, year on year, across the catalog. A brand that sells something for $23 and something else for $4,000 cannot stand still on price in either direction. 3 signals: sustainability, premiumization, price pressure. Individually, they look like product decisions. Together, they look like a direction. And once you see the direction, you cannot unsee it. Let's start at the bottom of the catalog. Because at entry level, Casio still looks like Casio. Still Casio. For now. At the entry level, nothing feels broken. The F91W bioresin version is still $23. Same case, same display, same features, same 7-year battery. Casio changed the strap material and added a sustainability story. The watch is still the watch. The DW5600 variants, the square digital G-Shock, are still under $200. Casio refreshed several of them with brighter LED backlights and better battery performance in January 2026. These are not redesigns, they are maintenance. Casio keeping its everyday lineup current without disturbing what works. The GA2100 series still anchors the middle of the G-Shock catalog. The collaboration models, Dragon Quest, Toyo Carp, Challenger, keep that platform relevant without raising prices. These are fun. They serve a specific audience. They do not change the argument about what Casio is. At this level, durability is still the headline. Affordability is still the point. The person who needs a watch that works in every condition, at any time, in any environment, for under $200, Casio still serves that person better than anyone else on Earth. The viewer who owns an F91W or a base DW5600 right now is in safe territory. This is still their brand. This is still their watch. Nothing about this part of the catalog has drifted. But this is also where you need to start paying attention. Because the further you move up the catalog, the less familiar Casio starts to look. Before we move into the upper range, there is one part of the catalog that doesn't get enough credit. The collaborations. Because they are doing something very specific. The collaboration layer. Casio releases are not all performance watches and luxury pieces. A significant portion of the 2026 catalog is collaborations. Dragon Quest, Toyo Carp, Ghost in the Shell, Pilgrim Surf and Supply, Hardy's NYC, Bamford, G-Shock X, Challenger Japan. A Coca-Cola collab. A Honda Edifice collab. Collaborations with a Japanese baseball team. A video game franchise. A surfboard shop. A New York streetwear label. And one of the most respected independent watch customizers in the world. This list is not random. It is a map of Casio's audience. The baseball collab is for Japan. The video game collab is for the gaming community. The surf brand is for the coastal lifestyle audience. The streetwear labels are for the urban fashion community. The Bamford collab is for the watch collector community that cares about premium customization. Casio is not trying to market to a single audience. It is trying to be present in every community simultaneously. Different collaborations for different people, same brand holding all of it. This strategy has a cost. When you are everywhere, you risk being nowhere specific. A brand without a specific audience does not have advocates. It has customers. And customers leave. Advocates stay. But the collaboration strategy also reflects something real about what Casio has always been. The F91W was never for one kind of person. The G-Shock was never for one kind of lifestyle. These are watches that exist across categories, because function is universal. Casio has always served multiple audiences. The collaboration layer is just making that visible in 2026. The question is whether this breadth strengthens the brand or dilutes it. And that question does not have an answer yet. What the 2026 collaboration calendar does show is that Casio believes the breadth is a feature. Whether the market agrees is what the next few years will determine. Now into the upper catalog, where the engineering gets serious and the story gets complicated. The Tool Watch Peak. This is where Casio stops being simple. The Mudmaster GWG B1000 series is the center of this category. Carbon fiber reinforced case. Mud-resistant buttons. Triple sensor. Compass. Barometer. Altimeter. Tough solar. Bluetooth sync. Multi-band radio time calibration. 200-meter water resistance. The 2026 Team Land Cruiser Edition, the GWG B1000 TLC, adds a specific identity to that engineering. It is made for people who actually use Land Cruisers in remote terrain. The watch matches the vehicle not just in color, but in philosophy. Overbuilt, functional, made to survive situations where failure is not an option. The collaboration is not cosmetic. It is brand alignment. Two objects built for the same conditions, carrying the same values. The price is around $500 to $600. At this level, Casio is still a tool brand. The watch earns its price with features you can measure. You can count the sensors. You can test the water resistance. You can verify the solar charging time. The price is high by Casio's historical standards. It is modest by watch standards, and the case for buying it is logical. This is Casio at its most impressive. A watch you could take to the Arctic, to a mountain range, to a military operation, and trust it to perform. Not because of brand prestige, because of engineering. The Frogman sits in this same territory. The 2026 Gigawatts 8200 series carries ISO dive certification. It was built for professional underwater work. The MRG BF1000, the full metal Frogman, takes that same mission and builds it with Casio's most premium materials. A titanium case machined to ISO standards for professional diving. Airtight construction. This is a watch you could use on a commercial dive operation. Both the Mudmaster and the Frogman represent Casio at its purest. Extreme function. Honest engineering. Price that reflects what the watch does, not what it signals about you. This is the high point of the original G-Shock promise. A watch for people who work in extreme conditions and cannot afford for their equipment to fail. A watch that takes the same DNA as the $23 F91W, functions above everything, and builds it to a professional specification. But something starts to change at the very next step. Not in the features, in the intention. From peak tool watch to something different. This is where the catalog crosses a line. The turning point. The MTG B4000 is the bridge between G-Shock as a tool brand and G-Shock as a luxury object. The 2026 MTG B4000D arrived on a hybrid carbon metal bracelet. The case combines a carbon fiber inner frame with a stainless steel outer guard. This is not the construction of a tool watch. This is the construction of something that wants to be respected for its materials and its aesthetic as much as for what it can survive. The bezel has been Zaratsu polished. That means flat surfaces ground by hand until they reflect light like a mirror, with transitions between polished and brushed surfaces so sharp they look machined. This is a finishing technique. It is not a performance feature. It does not make the watch more accurate. It does not improve the water resistance. It makes the watch more beautiful. That is all. That shift from performance as the justification to beauty as the justification is the turning point. The price is around $1,200, and at $1,200, you are not buying capability you cannot get from the Mudmaster at $600. The sensors are similar. The solar charging is the same. The water resistance is comparable. You are paying $600 extra for the carbon metal case construction and the Zaratsu polishing and the aesthetic identity of a watch that wants to be at home in a boardroom as much as in a canyon. That is a legitimate thing to want. There is a real buyer for this, someone whose life takes them both places, extreme outdoors and professional environments, and who wants one watch that works in both. Casio is serving that person. But this is also the first point in the catalog where the price is not fully explained by the specification, where some of what you are paying for is how the watch makes you feel about owning it. That is emotion entering the transaction. And emotion is the beginning of the luxury conversation. This is the moment. The release that changes the argument about what Casio is becoming. The luxury play. The MRGB2100D2A is where this story gets uncomfortable, not because it's a bad watch. It is not a bad watch. It is arguably one of the most technically accomplished watches Casio has ever made. The TI-64 titanium alloy case is stronger than standard titanium. It is the same alloy grade used in aerospace components. The Cobarian alloy top bezel is scratch-resistant to a standard that most watch brands at any price struggle to match. The Zaratsu polishing is done by hand by craftspeople at Casio's Yamagata facility, the same facility that handles the most demanding finishing work in the MRG line. The dial color is a deep, stately indigo blue. The name for the color in the Japanese design language is connected to morning mist over a mountain pagoda. This is not just as a poetic description, it is a deliberate reference to the Haguro-san Gojunoto, a designated national treasure in the Tohoku region. The inspiration is specific. The watch earns the reference: solar-powered, radio-controlled across 6 global time signals, Bluetooth linked to your phone, multi-band 6 reception, 5 months of power reserve in darkness, sapphire crystal, a 5-2-week calendar that auto-adjusts for every month. This is not a fashion piece pretending to be technical. The technology is real, the craft is real, the connection to Japanese aesthetic tradition is real. It is also $4,200 in the US, and it carries the G-Shock name as the DW5600, which costs $200. That price distance is what makes Casio's 2026 release calendar genuinely interesting. Casio has an identity question it has to answer. In the luxury watch world, brand coherence matters more than people realize. Rolex's cheapest watch costs around $7,000, and the most expensive watch costs over $60,000. That range feels coherent. Every Rolex is aspirational. Every Rolex communicates a level of success. The story holds from one end to the other. Casio's range spans $23 to $4,200. That range does not feel coherent. The F91W actively rejects aspiration. The MRG B2100 is pure aspiration. These two objects exist at opposite ends of the same philosophy about what a watch should be, and now both are in the 2026 catalog. At the same time, under the same name, Casio is now competing with watches that have 100 years of luxury positioning behind them, without the luxury legacy, without the exclusivity, without the brand mythology that makes a $4,000 watch feel inevitable rather than ambitious. That is a real challenge, not an insurmountable one, but a real one. And the 2026 releases make clear that Casio has decided to accept it. Here is where most buyers get confused. They see the MRG price and assume Casio has lost its mind. Or they see the F91W price and assume the brand is still exactly what it was. Neither reading is right. The real question is harder, and it has to do with what a brand owes its most loyal audience. Which camp are you in? The person who thinks Casio should stay where it started, or the person who thinks a brand should go as far as it can? Drop it below. I want to know. Now, for the real problem underneath all of this. The one nobody is talking about. Before we move on to the next part, let me tell you this. Most people don't realize this, but buying a watch the wrong way can cost you thousands, and you won't even notice it until it's too late. You walk into a store or browse online, and everything looks the same, but behind the scenes, there's a system. Prices aren't always fair, availability is controlled, and one bad decision can leave you overpaying for something that doesn't even hold its value. That's why I created a complete free insider guide to buying watches. Inside, you'll find the best watches to buy, the watches to avoid, and how to choose a watch that actually fits your style and budget long term. The goal is simple. I'll help you stop guessing and start buying smart. You'll find the free guide in the pinned comment and description. Now, let's move on to the next part, the identity problem. Here is the tension at the center of Casio's 2026 strategy. The F91W is respected precisely because it is not aspirational. It is not trying to be anything other than a watch. It does not borrow prestige from its price. It does not gain status from its materials. It is respected because it works, because it is honest, because it is available to everyone equally. When a billionaire and a student wear the same watch for the same reason, something unusual is happening. That is the F91W. That is the reputation Casio built. The MRG, B2100, is the opposite of that. It is aspirational by design. The pagoda inspiration, the hand polishing, the titanium alloys with specific technical designations. The price point that puts it in the same conversation as Swiss watches, with decades of luxury positioning behind them. The MRG B2100 is trying hard to mean something beyond function. Both are genuine Casio products. Both are in the 2026 catalog. Both have the same name on the dial. And the people who built Casio's reputation are watching this with a specific feeling. Not anger, something more complicated. The feeling of watching a brand discover ambition it didn't used to have. The student who bought an F91W in the 90s chose it specifically because it made no claims. It didn't say, "Look at what I spent." It said, "I needed a watch that works." That choice was a quiet statement, a refusal to participate in the watch world's game of status and spending. The F91W was the anti-luxury item. It was cool precisely because it wasn't trying to be cool. The MRG B2100 is trying to be cool. It is trying to be prestigious. It is trying to compete on the terrain that Rolex and Omega and Grand Seiko occupy. And in doing so, it is changing what the G-Shock brand name means. This is the identity drift problem. Not that Casio is making expensive watches. That has been true for years, but the expensive watches are now clearly aimed at a buyer who wants a luxury object, and luxury objects work by exclusion. They work by not being available to everyone. They work by costing enough that most people cannot have one. The F91W worked by inclusion, available to everyone, respected by everyone. The same watch on every kind of wrist. You cannot build a brand on both inclusion and exclusion at the same time. Not forever. Not without one of them eventually undermining the other. Casio is testing whether it can. The 2026 catalog is the experiment. The results are not in yet. The answer depends on who Casio is actually targeting with these releases and who they're willing to lose. Who this actually benefits. The MRG buyer is a real person. They exist. And they are not buying a G-Shock the way most people think of a G-Shock. They are buying the engineering story that Casio has built into the MRG line over decades. They want a watch that can survive extreme conditions and look appropriate at a business dinner. They want Japanese craftsmanship at a price that Swiss luxury cannot match for the same technical content. They are choosing Casio's MRG over a Breitling or a Tag Heuer, not because Casio is cheaper, but because Casio is offering something specific that those brands are not. That buyer does not think about the F91W. They do not feel any contradiction between owning a $4,000 G-Shock and the existence of a $23 G-Shock. They are buying the MRG on its own terms. The brand name that got them there is G-Shock, but the story that made them buy is the MRG line's own identity, craft, precision, and Japanese engineering heritage. Casio gains that buyer. That is real. And it is probably strategically necessary. The premium end of a catalog generates margin that the budget end cannot. If Casio wants to invest in better materials, more precise manufacturing, deeper craft traditions across the brand, the MRG line funds it. The F91W at $23 does not. So the MRG exists in part for the buyer it serves, and in part to fund the brand's ability to keep serving everyone else. That is not cynical. That is how brands work at scale. But there is a cost, and the cost is not financial. The community that turned G-Shock into a cultural institution is watching the brand they advocated for develop luxury ambitions, and that feeling is complicated. It is not quite betrayal. Casio did not stop making the F91W. It did not stop making the DW5600. The entry level is still there. The tool watches are still there. Nothing was taken away. But something was added. And what was added was the $4,000 watch with the hand-polished bezel and the Japanese national treasure as its inspiration. This changes the context around everything else. The F91W wore its cheapness like a badge. That was part of the statement. A cheap watch on the wrist of someone who could afford anything was the point. Now that same cheap watch shares a brand with a luxury object. And somehow, the F91W feels slightly different because of it. That is the identity drift. Not a product change, a context change. And context is very hard to control once it starts shifting. Casio didn't win by being expensive, and they didn't win by being cheap. They won by being undeniable. At every price point they entered, they made the best version of what they were selling. The F91W is undeniably the best $23 watch ever made. The Mudmaster is undeniably one of the best tool watches at its price. That pattern, show up at any price and be the best option there, is what built 40 years of loyalty. The MRG is a genuine attempt to extend that pattern upward, to show up at $4,000 and be undeniable there too. And technically, it might succeed. The MRG B2100D is a better watch than many Swiss options at similar prices in terms of raw specification and material quality. The Zaratsu polishing, the Kobarian bezel, the titanium case architecture, the pagoda inspiration that connects it to Japanese craft tradition in a way that is not decoration but intention. On paper and in hand, this is a serious watch. But being undeniable is not just about what is inside the watch. It is about what the brand means to the person wearing it. And meaning is not manufactured by a spec sheet. The F91W means something specific. It means, I don't need a watch to announce anything about me. I need it to work. The watch carries that meaning because Casio built it over 40 years of being the same watch at the same price for every kind of person. The MRG B2100 needs to earn its own meaning. It cannot borrow the F91W's democratic credibility. And it cannot borrow Rolex's century of luxury positioning. It has to build a reason to cost $4,000 that is specific to Casio. The engineering argument is there. The craft argument is there. The cultural argument, the story that makes $4,000 feel inevitable rather than ambitious, is not fully there yet. Maybe it gets there. Brands have made this journey before. Grand Seiko spent years being dismissed as a Seiko with a higher price. Now, it is genuinely considered luxury on its own terms. Tudor was Rolex's budget option. Now, it is its own thing. The path exists. But those brands did not have to maintain a $23 icon at the same time. They did not have to hold both ends of a 200 times price range simultaneously. Casio does. Once a brand starts chasing luxury, it rarely goes back. The question is not whether Casio can survive the attempt. They will. The question is whether the F91W and everything it represents can still feel like the same brand as the MRG B2100 a decade from now. If it can, Casio will have done something no brand in the watch world has ever done. If it can't, the thing that made Casio untouchable, the trust of people who don't trust luxury brands, will have been spent on something that required it to be spent. the cheapest great watch in the world, the most honest watch in the world, the watch that required nothing from you to deserve it. That was Casio. So, the question 2026 is asking, is the watch that Obama wore before he was famous, and the watch that a craftsperson hand polishes in Yamagata really the same brand? Is the thing that made the F91W untouchable still alive inside a $4,000 piece of Japanese titanium art? Some brands have held both truths at once. Most have not. The ones that failed did not fail by making something bad. They failed by forgetting what made people trust them in the first place. Casio's trust was earned in the cheapest way possible, by being the most honest watch you could buy, by asking nothing of the person who wore it, by being there when you needed it, and silent when you didn't. If the MRG B2100D earns the same trust on its own terms, Casio will have done something remarkable. If it doesn't, if the $4,000 watch becomes a distraction from the brand rather than an extension of it, the cost will not show up in sales figures. It will show up in what people say when they point to their F91W and explain why they bought it. And if they stop being proud to explain it, Casio will know. Drop it below. Which Casio do you own or want? The F91W, a Mudmaster, something from the MRG line? Tell us where on this spectrum you land. Like this video and hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.